You're listening to Kitchen Table Finance. Join Dave Shotwell and Nick Nauta as they cut through the complexity of financial planning and serve bites of investment advice that are both personal and practical.
Hey, Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Nick. How are you?
Fantastic. It's Podcast Friday. Summer is not giving up yet. It's not going away.
Not quite.
Beautiful weekend ahead of us.
Looks that way.
I love it. I'm sure you're not. You're loving it, but that's all right. I'm sure your time will come soon enough.
It's a little warm, but that's all right. We'll be all right.
So, today's topic, Dave, is a 4-step plan. We're getting real detailed in our podcast now.
Yeah.
A 4-step plan for dealing with the financial media. So I know this is something that both you and I talk to clients about on a regular basis. And it's not just clients. Sometimes this is good stuff to remind ourselves as well, right? Like,
absolutely.
There's all kinds of stuff that get you and I riled up in the market or in the financial media about the markets. So,
it's natural.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's, very natural. And that's kind of part of the problem is, taking the emotions out of it and recognizing how you get worked up and what it's doing to you is a good step in kind of dealing with that. So we thought we'd take a deeper dive, and I'll let you kind of explain the premises because a lot of this is from a book that you read and are rereading.
Yes. Yeah. So this, we can't take credit for the 4-step process here, but I borrowed this pretty much completely from Dr. Daniel Crosby, who is he's trained as a clinical psychologist, but he's known as a behavioral finance expert at this point in his career, and wrote a really good book called The Behavioral Investor, which takes a lot of the concepts of behavioral finance and teaches how to apply them to how you think about your portfolio and where we usually screw up. So, we did a book review of Thinking Fast and Slow a couple of weeks ago. Think of Kahneman and that book as kind of the foundation of behavioral finance. Daniel Crosby and Morgan Housel, who we've talked about a little bit here, and a few others have now started to take those concepts and teach us how we tend to let our brains mess up our portfolios.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the parts of this book talks about how the financial media plays a role in our thinking, and it's not the role that most people assume they're trying to play of helping us figure out what we should be doing with our portfolio. And he sets up this part of the book by talking. He appears on MSNBC and CNBC. I don't know if he's been on in a while, but he was there pretty regularly. And he talks about one of his first times there. He was being asked to speak about something going on, and off camera before it started, he told the producer what, his thoughts were on the topic. And, he's an academic psychologist, behavioral finance instructor. And as he's going on air, he's got the headphones on, and the producer is saying in his ear, "Don't be such a nerd. Just, we're here to sell the news, not, be the smartest guys in the room."
Right.
And he didn't know what to do or what to say, as he's going on. He's like, okay, am I going to lose all credibility here or not be invited back or, anyway. So without further ado,
it's interesting, actually, and the timing is perfect because the news that came out last night was that Mr. Rupert Murdoch, at the ripe young age of 92, is finally stepping down, right? And I just, as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, you think Rupert Murdoch was ever in a pitch meeting going, "Hey, you know what we should do is try to make better investors," and that's that's the kind of TV we should be producing around here.
Right. Absolutely not.
So like the last thing on his list, maybe, if it even made the cut.
Yeah. So, just keep in mind, the overarching premise here is that the financial media is not there to help you be a better investor.
Right. They're there to get eyes and viewers and listeners and readers, and none of that very rarely has anything to do with making you a better investor or understanding the markets better, right?
Right. So Dr. Crosby's first step in dealing with the financial media is to consider the source's credentials and source of authority.
Mm-hmm.
So are we listening to an academic with credentials and deep background, giving both sides of a story and how to think about things, or is it just someone who's a talking head on camera because they're charismatic and have personality?
Right. Well, that's just it. In order to get onto those platforms, you never hear the guy that goes on, or the gal, I should say, either one of them, that goes on and says, "Well, this could happen, or maybe this
Right.
happens, or
Yes.
this might happen." It's always this is
Yeah.
going to happen, right?
Right. And it's, uh, um, and we beat up on Jim Cramer a lot between the two of us, but I always say Jim Cramer could just as easily be talking about sports as he is
Oh, absolutely.
the investment world. He'd fit right in on one of the Sports Center shows where they have like
Absolutely.
four guys debating whether the defensive ends of the Philadelphia Eagles are
Yeah.
as good as last year.
Yep.
So just keep that in mind. A lot of these folks that you see on TV were not put there because they are the top in their field. They're put there because they get people excited and get people to pay attention.
Yep.
I'm
Absolutely.
going to add to that too. I think of a lot of the folks that are brought into the financial news made their name by making one right call somewhere along the line.
Mm-hmm.
I think of there was a woman who showed up on every week on MSNBC for a while because she was a hedge fund manager that made one good call going into the financial crisis having to do with mortgage bonds, and all of a sudden she was an expert on everything. And or they wrote a book that had some great claim.
Yeah.
And I think of Richard Dent, and we've talked about those before, but it's like writing a book about something that's out in the future that's never coming to pass or has not come to pass doesn't make you qualified to talk about everything in the markets.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually, speaking of that, I just saw a headline a couple of weeks ago, I believe, about the guy from The Big Short that was basically right about the and it's funny because the title was The Guy from The Big Short, like the hedge fund manager from The Big Short, because nobody knows what this guy's name is.
Not
but it's
anymore,
like he is shorting the market again, and that was like, well, if he was right that one time, he's probably right again, and so we should get out of the market. Like that's the headline of why people would pay attention to that, which it's just, and the thing about it is when you're wrong about stuff like that, they don't you be wrong 9 times out of 10, but you got it right once. And so all of a sudden people pay attention to you. Right.
Well, and there's a group of Wall Street folks called perma bears, right? They're always bearish. And the market is only in certain circumstances are the bears actually right. But they say it with conviction, and they say it over and over again. And as Grandpa used to say, even a stop clock is right twice a day. So eventually they'll have their moment.
Once or twice a decade, they'll get to shout it from the rooftops about how smart they are, right?
So anyway, Dr. Crosby's point number 2 or step number 2 in his 4-step plan is to consider the melodrama in what they're saying. And that kind of goes with that too. Like, again, back to Jim Cramer, if you're saying it with sound effects and flashing lights, you're getting people falsely excited about things that you really want to be dispassionate about. And vice versa. If it's a overstatement of doom and gloom, that's going to get everybody excited too.
Right.
So try to peel back the drama around what they're saying, good or bad, and see if there's actually any facts behind it. If there's any.
Yeah, well, I think that's an interesting one because I'm guilty of this as well. It's really easy to read headlines. It takes a lot more time to click through and be like, what is this actually about? What are they actually saying? What are the facts behind it? It's real easy to just take a headline and run with it, right?
Right. Right. So, kind of along those lines, step number 3 is examine the tone.
Mm-hmm.
And if the speaker or the writer is using ad hominem attacks, meaning, not basing what they're saying in objective reality, but instead attacking the delivery of the other side, or
Right.
something personal about the attack, that's a sign that you probably should be changing the channel or clicking away.
Yeah.
What agenda might they have other than the story?
Mm-hmm.
I think in that context too, it's subtle. It's more subtle, but you and I get bombarded with stuff from investment companies daily.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, sure, this company that specializes in real estate investment trusts is telling me, not to worry about the commercial real estate world, or why it's time for alternative investments in my client's portfolio right now. Well, sure, that just happens to be that your favorite flagship fund happens to be a leveraged
Right.
commodity fund or something,
Yeah.
and they'll always find a reason why it's time for their favorite thing, their darling, to be
Oh,
right.
yeah. Well, no more. And I think we've talked about this in previous podcasts as well, like the whole, the gold industry, if you will. Like they come up with some crazy
Yeah.
stuff on both sides of the political aisle to just make people like want to put all their money in gold because, the world's
those
going
companies
to hell in
have
a
gold
handbasket.
sitting in their stockpile that they want to sell you. So they're going to convince you, do everything they can to convince you that now is the time to buy it.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Just always consider what the agenda might be, whether it's trying to sell you something in particular or convince you of some political angle. There's often something other than just delivering the news going on behind it.
Right, exactly. Is there a call to action that's going to benefit whoever wrote this particular article that you've received, right?
Yeah.
That's a pretty big sign that maybe, they're over exaggerating or trying to get you to, do something based on emotions.
Right. And, so Dr. Crosby's step number 4 in his 4-step plan, if you've gotten this far and you're still thinking there's substance to what you're listening to, then jot down the facts that are in this, or, the purported facts, and check them yourselves and make sure that they are, they survive the veracity test. Try to independently verify those.
Well, and there's, it's interesting. There's so much information out there right now. I feel like you could take one article that says something and, Google the opposite, and I'm sure you'd come up with somebody that's saying the exact opposite thing with the same set of facts, right?
Right.
Like having both opinions is probably a good idea to kind of gear you more towards the middle of what is probably the reality. But you're absolutely right. Checking the facts. What are they actually saying? What are their sources? Can we make sure that we understand kind of what they're saying, where it's coming from?
Yeah. And, anybody who's stating anything with any definite certainty in the about what's going to happen in the macroeconomic world, that you can change the channel right then and there, as far as I'm concerned, if they're absolutely certain something is about to happen. So, bigger picture, stepping back from this a little bit, I think a lot of us will be better off going on a new, there's an author named Tim Ferriss. He's been around for a while, writes lots of self-help kind of stuff. Interesting guy. But one of the things he talked about early on, I used to listen to his podcast pretty regularly, was going on a news diet. And just trying to go like 24 hours or 36 hours without like reading any news, because really what good does it do you? We feel like we have to know, right? And what are you going to do with that news? All it's going to do is make you worry.
Right.
All it's going to do is increase your own uncertainty and you need to step back and say, okay, so say I listen to this story that is pretty convincing, passes all 4 of Dr. Crosby's steps here that we've talked about. What am I going to do? Like what's the logical next step. Do I, move all of my portfolio to cash?
Right.
Well, we can talk about what that means. And, or, am I going to somehow like lead my life differently?
Mm-hmm.
And this applies more than just the financial news, right?
Right.
Like,
Oh, absolutely.
like there's been every day there's headlines right now about UFOs and
Right.
extraterrestrials, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so at this point, if they haven't heard us, what am I going to do? Am I going to run around with a tinfoil hat on and
Right.
hide as in case a UFO might be about to hover out of the woods? I don't know. What are you going to do about it? Am I
Right.
going to change my
Absolutely.
life? No, I'm just going to like worry a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's only so much worry to go around in the world. So,
Yeah. Another thing that I would say too, if you are going to consume news, maybe think about when you're consuming it, right? Like
mm-hmm.
if you're better, less, on a more even keel in the
Yeah.
morning versus the afternoon, right? Like when are you less likely to have an emotional reaction to it? So and think about consuming during that window when you maybe aren't as emotional.
So what you and I have kind of joked about how every once in a while clients will say something to us at like 11 in the morning or 1 in the afternoon about something that's going on in the markets. I don't look at the news during the day. I look
I don't
at the
know.
news in the evening or the morning. And you know
Mm-hmm.
what is going on at that point? The market isn't open.
Yeah.
And so,
Right.
I can't, our clients count on us to try to be the filter on this stuff. Right.
Right.
And I'm not saying either of us are inclined to like read something at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and jump into our trading modules on, Schwab software and start moving stuff around.
Right.
But, I think just the rhythm of my day kind of, removes that. And that's not a bad thing for people to keep in mind is, hey, if you sit down in the evening and if you want to stay informed and you think that's important, then do it, at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. And
Right.
don't, log into E-Trade and place a bunch of futures orders or anything,
Yeah.
But I mean, there's nowadays you can trade some stuff around the clock. It used to be a little more regimented where 9:30 to 4 o'clock was your only time to really do anything. But
Yeah.
so
Well, yeah,
anyway,
you're absolutely right. And, even if you did, you'd have, 8 hours to think about canceling that trade
yeah,
before the market
right,
opened, right? Like,
right,
and putting
right.
a little bit of time in between, like
Yeah,
actually acting on something like that
a
is a
buffer, right?
huge, huge, benefit to you to think about that and let the emotions cool
Yeah,
down a little bit. But
yeah,
no, I think this is kind of a great 4-step plan for thinking about it. We're constantly bombarded with it, and it's not going to stop. There's always, they're always going to move on to the next thing, and so having a plan for how you deal with that and how you make sure that you're making decisions, if that's what you're ultimately going to end up doing, based on looking at things from an objective standpoint, I think is super helpful. Or most of the time, the best thing to do, especially in investing, is to not make any changes. So
right.
if this helps you, with that, helps you not panic, helps you, keep your portfolio where it is, that is, worth its weight in gold, right?
Yeah, yeah. So love
Awesome.
the irony of that slide.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. It's been good, Nick.
Always a pleasure. If our listeners have any questions or any topics that you're interested in, feel free to shoot us an email at info@srbadvisors.com. Thank you very much, Dave.
Have a great one, Nick.
This is a Zedia Media production.